Good morning and welcome to Brodey Weber, legislative candidate from District 21. Thank you, Brodey, for joining us today for our virtual legislative candidate meeting. My name is Gina Ragland, and with us today are advocacy lead volunteers Susan DeCamp, Bob Lassen, and Danny DeLong. Emily Wick is also joining us from the AARP state office. Brodey, we appreciate your taking the time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter and their families in Nebraska. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. So to begin, Brodey, if you want to start us off by giving a little background about yourself and your campaign, aiming for 5 minutes or less, that would be great. Once we've completed your opening, we'll move into the questions and go from there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Brodey Weber. I am running for the Nebraska State Legislature in District 21, which is Northwest Lincoln and Northwest Lancaster County. And the reason I'm running is because I'm a lifelong resident of my district. I grew up in the Highlands and went to Friedstrom Elementary. Before that, I went to the Belmont Community Center for preschool. I was part of the first class to go all the way through ESCO Middle School out in Fallbrook. Graduated from Lincoln North Star in 2016, and I just recently graduated from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln this last May. It was 3 days before the primary, so I was really glad that I was able to get through that week. And I graduated with a degree in communication studies. And the reason that I think that's really important is in my senior year, I studied political communication, especially conflict resolution, negotiation, interpersonal communication. And I think that would be a huge asset for us to have, is someone who can break through that partisan rhetoric that often goes against the nature of our nonpartisan unicameral as it was intended. So I think that's really important. I also, the way I was able to put myself through college was for the last 3 years, I've been working for our family business out in Air Park. We have a small tire warehouse company out there. And that's why I tell voters is I believe that representation matters. And I don't think that our area could have a more effective senator than someone who's lived here, went to school here, works here, was raised here. Because at the end of the day, when I'm making decisions about what's in our best interests in the state capitol, I have to answer to people I've known my entire life. I have to answer to my lifelong friends, my family, my neighbors. And I don't think it should be refreshing. Sadly, though, I think it would be for us to have a state senator that has no other choice but to continue to put the residents of Northwest Lincoln and Northwest Lancaster County always first. And so that's a big reason I'm running. I also, though, think that I'm uniquely qualified to hold this position. I currently serve on the board of directors for my neighborhood association, the Highlands Neighborhood Association. And in that role, I've helped, advocate for the neighborhood and make sure that it's a great place for us to live and have our children grow up, and a great place to retire. I've also been a mayoral appointee on the Lincoln Lancaster Keno Human Services Advisory Board. And one reason I think that's really important is in that role, I have helped disperse funds to local COVID-19 relief projects. And I think that's really important, that when I'm in the Nebraska legislature come this January, I'll be able to hit the ground running on addressing the impacts that we have seen from COVID-19. I also serve on the board of directors for Community Action Partnership of Lancaster and Saunders County. In that role, I've helped oversee a $12.5 million budget, and I have a fiduciary obligation to be a good steward of those funds. And I think that with my track record, I can be a responsible and a good steward of taxpayer dollars when balancing the budget in the Nebraska State Legislature. And so that's why I'm running.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brodey. We're going to now move into the question portions. And again, we've provided you with a set of 3 questions pertaining to the 50-plus voter and their families in Nebraska. Again, we've allotted 5 minutes for each of those questions. Our first question today will come from Danny DeLong, and it's going to address helping people stay in their homes and communities. So go ahead, Danny.
Thank you, Brodey. Thank you. Welcome to our interview here. A livable community is one that is safe and secure, has housing that is affordable. In other words, no more than 30% of the income is spent on housing, has transportation options that allow individuals to travel by multiple means, and has supportive community features and services for people of all ages, allowing people to remain in their communities as they age. What steps will you take to ensure all Nebraskans have access to livable communities?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad that I was able to get this question. As someone, who's on the neighborhood association, as I previously mentioned, I think that gives me a unique perspective of the challenges that neighborhoods in Northwest Lincoln are really facing, as well as neighborhoods and the residents of Northwest Lancaster County and the rural parts of the district, like Malcolm, Raymond, and Davie, and the surrounding areas. In my time, the reason I joined my neighborhood association, I think I was just 21 at the time when I joined my neighborhood association. And I was asked all the time why I decided to join it at such a young age. And it's the same neighborhood that I grew up in, the same neighborhood that I went to school in. And because of the individuals that were in charge of the neighborhood association, the community leaders, they made that a great place for me to grow up. It allowed me many opportunities to be able to be running at the age of 23. And so for that, I think it's really important for us to have leaders in the Nebraska legislature that know the real issues that these neighborhoods are facing. I think the first thing we need to do is to have community investment within our neighborhoods. When Mayor Chris Beitler was leaving office in 2019, in his farewell address, he stated that one of the #1 issues facing the city of Lincoln was investing in the Air Park Recreation Center and getting that funding. That's in my district, and we have not been able to see any movement within that project since he's left office. And so I've often discussed, I think it's time for the state to take the lead on it and to make sure that facilities like the Air Park Recreation Center are there to provide an outlet for families, for childcare, for children to have these resources so that way they're able to grow up. So I want the state of Nebraska to be able to introduce grants to these communities like Air Park and to other communities that are able to improve their community resources and their infrastructure. And so that's an issue that's really important to me. But then also addressing the cliff effect, I think, is something that we absolutely need to do. And the cliff effect is when an individual who is making a certain amount of money, who's on assistance, does a really good job, and they are able to get a promotion, a pay raise, and they have to turn it down because the amount that they would be making would be above the threshold to be getting that assistance, but it would be under what they would be making with assistance, right? And I don't think anyone of any political affiliation would agree that people should be penalized for doing their job well. And so I think we really need to stagger the way that assistance works, especially with pay raises and promotions, to, instead of penalize these workers, give them incentive to do a great job. And so that's something that I really want to address, because I know that that would be beneficial to our local communities, and it would build our local economy. And also something I was previously mentioning, I think the last time, was transportation is something we really need to focus on, especially in my district. We need to make it accessible for low-income individuals, the elderly population, people who don't have access to their own vehicles. We need to make it to where they are able to get to work, or that they are able to get their groceries. And so that's something that I'm a huge proponent of. And that's how I really want to address it. And another thing that I was not able to share on why I was running, that I just want to add quickly, that I think ties into this issue, is I talk a lot about how I'm the youngest candidate running for the Nebraska state legislature in the state. And the reason that I am running is because at the age of 23, I understand that my generation, we can't keep kicking the can down the road on these important issues and letting the next generation deal with it, letting it, re-electing these business as usual elected officials and candidates, because at the end of the day, we need action on the environment environment. We need action on transportation, on student loans, on food access, and on Social Security. And so that's something I wanted to mention in my opening statement that I think really ties into making these livable communities is we need to elect someone who knows that we need to act on these policies, not just hand it off to the next person in the job.
Great. Thank you so much, Brodey.
Yes, of course.
Second question then will come from Susan DeCamp, and it addresses health, caregiving, and home and community-based care. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, Brodey. It's nice to have you with us. My question, caregivers help older persons live independently at home by providing assistance with activities such as bathing and dressing, and also performing medical and nursing tasks such as administering medication and wound care. Caregivers often provide these services with little or no training, as well as little or no pay. So with that in mind, I have a two-part question. First, would you support helping caregivers with things such as paid leave, respite services, telehealth, and access to education and training? And secondly, how would you protect or expand paid services and supports, as well as financial security that would allow more seniors to remain in their homes and communities as they age?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for this question. And absolutely, I would support paid leave for the workers in nursing homes. And truthfully, I support paid sick leave for all employees in the state of Nebraska. Senator Crawford's bill that she introduced last session, I would have enthusiastically not just supported, but I would have co-sponsored it, because as someone who works for a small business, I can tell you that the argument that paid leave hurts businesses is just frankly false. It helps businesses. It helps productivity. We need to take care of our workers so our workers can do their job, and they can't do that when they're sick. And so I have to admit, I was extremely disappointed that our Nebraska state legislature, in a global pandemic, was unable to pass paid sick leave policies. I think it was a sign of total lack of empathy, compassion, at times common sense. And I think more than anything, it was irresponsible, because we had senators that were focusing more on political agendas and potentially future campaigns than focusing on the needs of everyday Nebraskans. And that's, again, why I got in this race. Is I'm running because I'm a lifelong resident of my district, and I want to put my community first, something that I don't feel that is being done in the Nebraska state legislature. And I think a great example is the failure to pass paid sick leave in a global pandemic. So I think we really need to do that next session. I plan on co-sponsoring pieces of legislation to do just that. As for nursing homes in general, and the elderly population, I think about my great grandmother who's in assisted living right now in Tecumseh, Nebraska. This is a real issue that families are facing. This is an issue that when I visit my parents at their house, it's not unlikely for my mother to be on the phone with my grandma talking about how what they're going to do to make sure that my great grandma's taken care of in these assisted living facilities. And we need to understand that these are our loved ones living in these facilities, and so we need to take care of these populations. What we need to do is make sure that there is transparency and leadership, but for people as they age in the state of Nebraska, we need to make sure that they're economically successful. I think the way that we can do that, and sufficient, and I think the way that we can do that is by raising our earned income tax credit up from 10% to 20% in the state of Nebraska by 2023. This was a proposal introduced by Senator Patty Panzenbrooks that was unable to get out of committee. This is something that happened in the state of New Hampshire, and we saw great results once they raised their earned income tax credit up from 10% to 20%. But then also we need to make sure that SNAP is more accessible to low-income individuals. This is something that Senator McAllister worked on in 2019 with Legislative Bill 255, and that's something that I want to further work on, making it to where it is accessible for more individuals. I think while we're also talking about that, we need to urge the governor to extend the emergency food assistance. Right now, he's the only governor in the state or in the nation that is not accepting the federal funding that we have already paid into. It is our tax dollars that we have paid into. We need that emergency food funding for those who may not have access to it. We also need to make sure that we protect every single penny of Social Security at the state level, while making sure that the Department of Health and Human Services is adequately expanding Medicaid expansion, because that's something that we've seen roadblocks in as we're trying to expand. And the voters were loud and clear on how they felt about that issue. And so we need to make sure that the Health and Human Services is doing an adequate job of expanding that.
Great. Thank you for your very thorough answer.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Brodey. Our last question now will come from Bob Lassen, and it addresses nursing facility quality. Go ahead, Bob. I think you're on mute, Bob.
Sorry. There we go. We're going to shift gears just a little bit, Brodey, and move into a little further requirements as far as taking care of our elderly people.
Mm-hmm.
There's an estimated 6,600 Nebraskans right now that reside in one of Nebraska's 211 nursing homes. By 2014, the University of Nebraska Omaha projects that number will more than double to almost 14,000. Due to a variety of factors over the past few years, Nebraska has seen an increase in the number of nursing facilities that have closed, and residents have been relocated to different facilities. How will you ensure that Nebraska residents receive quality nursing home care, including ensuring an adequate nursing workforce, education, training, and proper reimbursement, so these facilities can continue to operate?
Absolutely. And again, just like I previously mentioned, this is a personal issue for me. I know this is something that the facility that my great-grandmother is in, that they're struggling with, right? With the lack of funding. And so this is a real issue impacting Nebraskans in all 93 counties. And it's something that we need to take very seriously. Again, what I want to say, and I don't think I can stress it enough, is something that we needed to do with these nursing facilities from the very beginning of COVID was be transparent about the condition that they were in and the status that they were in with COVID-19. And the reason that I say that is because there was a lack of leadership at the state level. And I think it's important to talk about it, because I think it's important to hold those that lacked the leadership, to hold them accountable. And so I just want to start off by talking about that. But then also, to answer your question, I think what we really need to do is provide some incentives to the employees in these nursing facilities to, first want to do the job, and to want to do the job well, to get the proper training to be able to do the job well. And I think, part of that comes with reimbursement, but I think another bit of that comes with giving someone the financial incentive to go into this line of work, because it's not an easy job. And so I think, like we do with other professions, like we do with teaching, like we do with correctional facilities, like we do with law enforcement, we need to provide these individuals that choose to do this for a career, the financial incentive to be able to do that. And I think the best way for us to do that is for, facilities that have state funding, to make the pay more competitive, to make sure that, especially in the areas like I think about in my grandmother's instance in Tecumseh, right? It is beneficial for you to go work at the state penitentiary because of the pay. And we need a very similar system where individuals who live in that surrounding area can go work in the nursing home, the assisted living center, for the same reasons, that the pay is competitive and that they'll be able to provide for their families. When we make sure that our employees are taken care of, that is when they are the most productive. And because of that, they will be taking care of our loved ones at a great rate and a great job. And I think the individuals already are doing a great job in taking care of our loved ones. The problem is not the quality of workers that we have in these nursing homes, it's the quantity. And we need more quality workers to join them. And that's why I say that we need that financial incentive. But we can't do that if these nursing homes don't have additional revenue. And so I think it's really important for the state of Nebraska to attract additional forms of revenue, whether that's legalizing it through the legislature, whether that's, looking at sales tax exemptions, property taxes, just looking at the whole way that we take in revenue as a state. I think especially business incentive would be the best way for us to try to get this additional revenue. We need to do that to be able to get these to get that additional revenue, and then provide grants for these nursing home facilities to be able to offer these good paying jobs, especially in communities outside of Lancaster and Douglas County, to make that a real viable workforce and line of work for our individuals. And so I guess, in short, making sure that we're able to fund it properly, like we need to also be able to fund our schools properly. And I think a great way for us to be able, great first step for us to do this is to get, our correctional system under control, because the excess revenue that we have to use to keep, to deal with prison overcrowding, could be going to taking care of our nursing homes. And that is a real issue that we need to be focusing on.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brodey. And again, that's the 3 questions that we had presented. And as we're coming to the end of our meeting, I'd like to offer you final minutes for any closing thoughts or comments that you have, or maybe messages you want to send to the constituents that you're representing in your district. So go ahead, Brodey.
Absolutely. First, I just want to say one of the greatest experiences I've had in my life is campaigning in Northwest Lincoln and Northwest Lancaster County. I started again in June doing socially distant conversations at the doors, where I leave information on the door, I ring the doorbell, I step back with my mask on and have conversations. And it truly has reminded me exactly why I'm running. Every night I run into someone that I've known in my life, right? Whether that's my former preschool teacher, my old neighbors that remember me when I was 2 years old, my friends' parents, my students, aunts, uncles. And it just reminds me exactly why I'm running for office, is because I want to represent my lifelong friends, my family, my neighbors, and I want to make sure that they have the very best voice that they can have in the state capitol when the legislature reconvenes this January. And I'm convinced that that best voice is me. I think I can really do a great job advocating for our area, and I would be honored to serve, because I really do think it's time for us to have a person who's from here and for here advocating for us at the state level. I think something that's really important to know is that people can go to my website. It's brodeyweber.com. That's BRODEYWEBER.com. And on that website, I have a contact tab, and I personally respond to all messages that are sent to that tab. Questions, comments, concerns, just people trying to get a hold of me. And I think the reason that that's really important is I want people to know in District 21 to never hesitate to reach out to me, because one of the reasons I am running is I felt like I hadn't been listened to for the last 4 years at the state level with these state issues. And I think that's really important. And I don't think anyone should ever feel that way about their local senator and about their local government. And I think the way that people campaign is really indicative of the way that they end up morning. And I plan on being an accessible senator to everyone that I serve in District 21. And so I'm trying to be an accessible candidate. And the last thing I want to say is, this is not an election that is red versus blue. This is an election that's a coalition of Democrats, Republicans, and nonpartisans in Northwest Lincoln and Northwest Lancaster County that are ready to invest in Nebraska and ready to see that all Nebraska can be. And so if you like what I hear, I encourage you to join our coalition, and I would be honored to have your support this November 3rd.
Great. Thank you again, Brodey, for taking the time to visit with us. We wish you the best with your campaign. And most importantly, thank you for meeting with AARP Nebraska.
Yes, thank you. I am so glad I was able to have this opportunity.
Thanks, Brodey.
Thanks, Brodey.
Thank you.